Hello everyone and welcome to
God Culture.
Game of Thrones is good. What Culture's very own Game of Thrones podcast and now channel. We have been recapping every season in the run-up to season 8 and we have finally got on to season 7. We ended on a pretty major note. Cersei has finally blown up the sept and has made herself queen. Tommen has killed himself. Jaime has arrived back in King's Landing looking all worried. Dany has finally set sail for Westeros. Sam is at the Citadel now and Arya has left Bravos and gone home to deliver some Frey Sons pies. That's where we've got up to 4 times trying to record this, and we've laughed every single time. Guys, just giving you like general overviews on like the season before we jump into it in general.
Good. That's mine. No, I think this season it's really fun. It's a good season. Loads of stuff happens. It proper just keeps on smashing you every episode with something new that's really exciting and game-changing. So it's like a work to keep up with it. I was so disappointed that it was 7 episodes when it first came around, but I think that it did speed up the pace to match the shorter time frame. I think it could have gone into 10, but 7 was good. It kept a good pace. Everything was good. The only thing that I would criticise about it is that it strays a little bit into fan fiction at times with the whole hoppy teleporty thing and a couple of moments which are obviously being drawn from the minds of the showrunners more than they are the book. So,
yeah, I think we've had that for a couple of years, but I think that sort of mentality finally starts to show itself in this season. James, overall thoughts?
Kind of the opposite of Ash, really.
Interesting.
Sorry.
Interesting.
Just in that, talked about like 7 episodes rather than 10. I think that really hurts it this year. Ooh. I think the pacing is so off compared to previous seasons. And it's just like little leaps of logic and stuff like that weren't there before in Game of Thrones. And it kind of feels like they're rushing to get to the end game because it's the penultimate season. They know they're setting it up and they're just like, right, we need to get from A to B. Just do it as fast as we can.
Yes.
And I found it really frustrating where there was just certain things, if they'd had 10 episodes, you think that would have played out so much better because we know they can do it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I thought the sort of condensed season might have benefited on like a rewatch, but I think you can sort of see that A to B storytelling kind of like start to play out. Like they know their end goals and they know they need to get there, but I think they've packed so much into this season that I can't understand why they try to condense it all. Because you do get those like leaps in logic, and you do get those weirdly condensed plots that would have probably benefited with more time to breathe, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I suppose the season kicks off, as you've mentioned. Arya is impersonating Walder Frey and eliminates the rest of the Frey house. So sort of the second part of the revenge that was started at the end of last season. Very satisfying, very overdue. I was glad to see one final Walder Frey performance, to be honest. I think I said in the last podcast, he's like, I can't remember the actor's name, but he's in like a load of great
David Bradley.
stuff. That David Bradley, thank you, James, as well. Yeah. I as much as him as I can get, because I really love that character. Like, how is this as like a kickstart to the season for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, because it doesn't do cold opens very often.
Yes.
And when it does, they're usually pretty good.
Yeah.
And this may be one of the best. Because it's just so satisfying, isn't it? Because there's that little bit of weirdness you were talking in one of the failed attempts.
We do, yes. Many failed attempts.
About being like unsure it was who it was and stuff. And it's just like, eyes like taking off the face and saying the North remembers. It's really great.
Yeah, it's a proper little dive back into everything that you I guess you not forget about, but having that big time away from it, you proper just thrust back in on season 7's moment, being like, oh my god, okay, this is all happening now. I was the same as well. I completely forgot about the Walder Frey stuff. I was like, wait, did I imagine? Are we in a flashback? Like, what is happening? And then when she hoists his face off and is like, wait, that was good. That was a proper little, there she is. I
think it's a good sort of like, I don't know, statement of intent, because Arya's had like a difficult few seasons. Her storyline has been up and down, but I think, well, we'll get to it soon, but she has a lot to do this season, a lot more. Yeah. Some of it good, some of it bad, but I think her as a character is as strong as she's potentially ever been like during the season. That's a great way to kick it off. Next, we got Daenerys arriving home. You're already gone, James. Just the residual idea of these. We went through a lot of failed attempts because we couldn't get through. James Hunt kept laughing at the Frey Sons pie joke from last week. And we've only just got through it.
It's bad.
It is bad, James. It is really bad. Actually,
joke, though.
It is a good joke.
Is it?
No. I just thought I'd give him a bit of a
I'm not gonna lie. I'm having a bit of your hair.
A bit of hair?
It keeps bouncing.
James, that's not even going to translate to everyone watching on the bloody...
But this little bit here, and it keeps bouncing back and forth.
Right, well, you keep focused on that. And I'm going to talk to Ash about...
A little piece of a beret. You can carry on though.
This is a Game of Thrones podcast, I promise you. I was going to talk about Danny, but I actually want to talk about Euron and.
I think you said you. I was like, what?
Euron, yeah, and particularly emo Euron, because he. We talked about last podcast about how I didn't really like him because he's sort of just this kind of. For me, he was a generic bad guy for a little bit. He came in, he had a lot of evil to do, and then he felt a little bit one-dimensional. But I think he gets fleshed out in this because they do just turn him into an emo. He gets eyeliner now, he gets darker hair, and he gets to mope about a lot.
And it works so well.
It does work so well.
It just works for him so well. Rewatching the season, I can see what you mean about him translating much better as a character here, and him building up himself, and him being this proper villainous, like deliciously evil sort of man, and the eyeliner really helps. Like, not gonna lie, but I think he's fantastic. I like his whole thing with Cersei, with the big battle with the boats and everything. I think there's loads of moments that really define him as great in this season.
Yeah, I love him as this sort of like rogue kind of spark that's just thrown into sort of King's Landing in between Cersei and Jaime. Like, I love when he's talking to Jaime, which we'll go on. And after he's promised to marry into the family, and he's going to get a gift for Cersei, and he's berating Jaime, and he's on about his sex life with his sister, and he's like, oh, does she like it gentle? Does she like it rough? Does she like a finger up the bum? And
well, that's going to be a gift.
It is going to be a gift. It is. I think he's really great this season. Like, he completely won me over from last year, and he gets that awesome boat battle where again it's another one of those just kick the season off in a great way moments where there's like death and like people being captured that you don't know, and Cersei once again has the upper hand. James,
I'm sorry, your face now. You're getting this laugh. I think he's so much better than last year. Because when he first came in, like you say, he was just generic. He was a bit bland. He didn't really do anything. Now he's got his guy liner on, and he's like just full on like mad pirate. Like, he's absolutely crazy, and you just believe him as this like really awful villain, which I didn't get in the last season. Like, he doesn't really do anything, and now he's like killing the Martells. He's capturing Euron, and not Euron, that is him. He's capturing Yara. He just really believes like this frightening, crazy pirate who's been all over the world, seen all these things.
There's that awesome moment on the boat where he's got Yara, and like he tells like he's trying to goad Theon, and he's got this like crazy look in his eye, and then obviously Theon's like, I'm not having any part of this, and he jumps overboard, which is like, come on, Theon, Yara's done so much for you over the years, and I don't care if he's still a little bit broken, you can't fight this mad pirate who's just killed everyone.
He's been through a lot though, hasn't he?
He has been through.
Yeah, but he could still just bash him one, make the
bash him one, you die.
I don't know, give him a little slap, one of them. Get off her.
It's called a redemption arc, isn't it?
I didn't have anything to say then besides noises, but they all came out in weird form. But yeah.
Well, Theon, like Alfie Allen is so good as Theon. I think he gets a really good moment just after this where he washes up and he meets Jon Snow again for the first time ever. But it's an interesting scene to go back to watch for me because we've sort of had the catharsis of seeing Theon punished for what he did to the Starks. We've seen him like go through this horrible torture, become like a shell of a man, and slowly start on that redemption arc. But Jon Snow hasn't. You know what I mean? So you've got that weird kind of, I don't know, dissonance between how you want this sort of scene to go, but then also you're kind of quite sympathetic for Theon in a way where you know he kind of deserves it, but at the same time, he's been through a lot of crap, like you said, James. Like I think I said at the beginning that this season more so, I think you might have said Ash actually, is like all about like reunions and sort of waiting for those payoffs to moments that characters finally reuniting after seasons away, and I think that potentially is one of the first ones where you finally get like Theon to atone for his actions and start to make it up to Jon, which I really like his arc throughout this show, and I think Alfie Allen is just so good considering how little he's had. I don't know.
There's so many times where he could have died and it would be fine.
Yeah.
Yet he's still around. He's one of those ones that's weirdly still around, and I find it kind of strange. I really like the character. I really like everything they've done with him. I think it's all fantastic. But he's the only one that feels kind of drawn out at the moment, I think. Especially with the whole Greyjoy storyline kind of flittering around all over the place throughout all of the seasons. But I don't know.
No, I agree, because I think the Greyjoys, their storyline this season is good, but again, you've sort of got like Yara sitting most of it out like she did a few years ago, and he's still kind of waiting for that to properly wrap up and Theon to finally sort of like go after her like she tried to save him. And I think the fact that that's put off this entire season is kind of, they could have probably done more with that, I'd say, like over this year. I don't know.
Yeah, it does feel a bit weird because like going into season 8, obviously like that storyline feels quite separate from the rest of it. Obviously you've got Theon going to save Yara, going back to the Iron Islands, but Euron's going to get the Golden Company. So it's like, how does Theon really fit in? Especially in like the bigger picture of fighting the Night King and stuff. So it is a little bit disjointed, sort of.
What if Theon ends up the winner of the throne? The winner of the game?
Yeah, just let him win. You know
go
what?
on.
It'll be meaningless by then anyway.
He's suffered enough.
He has, yeah.
Sculled around these seasons long enough. Just put him on the throne.
Make
Go
him
on.
king. It'll
Yeah.
be fine.
Yeah,
Obviously, during all of this, Jon Snow has finally met up with Daenerys because she's
Yes.
gone down for after bickering with Sansa. Actually,
Sorry, that made me laugh.
I thought you were just going to leave it somewhere else.
Down.
He's gone down. Not until later in the season, actually, Ash.
That's a great worm, actually, in this season.
Yeah, obviously, when we start the season, Jon and Sansa have reunited, but there are tensions in the Stark household.
Yeah.
He wants to bring in the families that were sided with Ramsay. She doesn't think he should. There's tensions there. He goes off and leaves sort of the North with her, essentially, who's being controlled by kind of Littlefinger. He's trying to worm his way in.
Yeah.
But I think, what about Jon and Daenerys' first sort of like meet up and like their development over the season? Because that is very quick, going from him not wanting to bend the knee and not really caring too much about it to that connection going to a romantic level in the space of 7 episodes after such a long wait. How do you think they handle that overall?
Mostly pretty well. It is one of the areas where I think you have an extra 3 episodes, you show a bit more of their like development, their relationship. It does feel stronger. But in terms of their first meeting, obviously that's like something we've been waiting for since the beginning of the show. The 2 biggest characters of the series finally coming together.
Yeah.
I think it's really well handled because it's quite low key. And you've got that great little moment where Missandei reels off all of Daenerys' titles and then Davos just goes, he's king in the north. They're kind of bantering off a little bit, but it does play really well.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Oh yeah, sorry. Me. I think it was great, but I remember feeling distinctly disappointed the first time I watched it, just because I wanted them to like each other so much.
Yeah.
Which is why I think, for me personally, even though I do recognise it was rushed and the whole 7-episode thing squished it down a lot, them rushing into the romance thing, I was probably like, yes, do it,
Yeah.
do each other. Like, I was just gasping.
Get Daddy Euron in. Go on, get him in.
But yeah, no, it was. I thought it was really great watching them develop. But starting at this point, and the disappointment wasn't a bad thing. It was proper like, okay, they're starting at this really low level, and they're going to really slowly intertwine and build this up properly. It isn't going to just be like, oh, here they are, smash.
I know what you mean, because I think like Game of Thrones has potentially struggled with for as unpredictable as it was in its earlier seasons. There are some storylines where you know exactly where it's going to go, and it's sort of you're just waiting and going through the motions and waiting for it to happen. For me, Dany and Jon was kind of that. Like, you have the whole thing with him not wanting to bend the knee, and you know he's eventually going to come around in general, and you kind of know where it's going. But I think the chemistry between Emilia Clarke and Kit Harington is really good, and they sort of carry it. And like you said, you get those great little interactions between Davos and everyone, and like it's really funny and really kind of charming and heartwarming, and they feel like people rather than just sort of these characters and archetypes with like arcs. They feel human in a way that sometimes I think they haven't, in a way. Like that kind of human interaction, when you're just doing that sort of point A to point B storytelling in Game of Thrones, sometimes just gets lost in like the grandiosity of it. But I like the way they sort of develop their relationship, even if it is, for me, a little bit predictable and rushed.
Yeah.
That's
fair.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
That's very fair. Well done,
Well
John.
said.
I hope I made a good point there. Cheers, pal. Jumping from one queen to another, Cersei is just being the best in this entire season.
She is great time.
She is, isn't she? She's like sort of grabbed power with both hands. She's married off to Euron. She's trying to settle her debts, and she's just sort of, I don't know, with Tommen being dead and the wedge being formed between her and Jaime. It's like she's just out for herself, and then obviously later on she reveals that she's preggers, and then it's just like you see this sort of self-preservation, this kind of iciness that's always been there, just on full display. There's like no hiding it. It's just like it's her way. And I think skipping ahead a little bit, but I love that scene when Jaime finally leaves.
Yes.
Like he finally says like he's done. There's been this growing resentment all season, and then he finally says like, I've had enough. And there's that horrible haunting moment where you see the mountain like behind him, and I remember watching that at the time, and again watching it again and just being so scared for him. But his redemptive arc and Cersei's continuous sort of sticking to her guns and like probably going to be her death from her own arrogance and kind of like steadfastness.
I hope not. I actually hope not.
Really
I
not.
think she's so fantastic as this. She's not good. She is quite evil, but like there's always a reason for it behind it. Like she's quite self-serving, but she's always been so protective of her family and her children. And even though I don't know, Joffrey was a bit of a knob.
He was
like just her whole reasoning and the way her character is structured, and this whole like matriarch character that she's really pushed, and I just think it's fantastic. I'm really behind her in the way that she's grown. And it would be really good to see that pay off properly in season 8, but she is going to have to bite the dust at some point.
It is interesting because, I mean, when there's that scene early on where she poisons... I've forgotten how to pronounce the name, James.
Ilaria.
No.
She poisons Tyen.
Tyen in front of Ilaria, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you can sort of comes through there where you're not rooting for her, but you can totally see her motivations and reasoning, and you kind of like... Yeah, like what she's doing there is abhorrent and horrible and literally killing a child in front of a mother. And yet...
But you're still a little bit like, go on.
Yeah, you're like, go on. Yeah. Like, you are my queen. And I don't know why I feel about that.
It's because Lena Headey is just so phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like, and it's her face.
Yes.
Like, she just says so much with a facial expression that like most people would need a monologue to do.
That's it.
And she just does it all with this little movement. And it's just incredible.
You said something before about her doing all of her acting with her mouth, and like this is the season definitely that like she's the mouth woman, like definitely a bit of a sneer.
Do you think there is any chance at redemption for Cersei? Because I mean, there has been such a like her and Jaime are on two completely different paths, and this season obviously ends with her kind of like agreeing to help out Jon and everyone else to fight the Night King, but then obviously she's like got her own ulterior motives again. She's again just sticking to this idea of like self-preservation, like all the power for her, no interest in the rest of the kingdom. Will that ever sort of like turn around, do you think?
I can't see it now. I think 6 episodes left and Jaime's gone, which is great because I've been waiting for Jaime to leave after years.
Yes.
Jaime is just the best, by the way. But Cersei is also great.
Yeah.
But she's a great villain.
I say it's very different ways, isn't it?
Like very complicated villain. She's not like Joffrey and Ramsay were both just evil, whereas Cersei isn't, which makes her all the more fascinating to watch. But I still can't see how she survives.
Yeah, I think I'm with you.
There isn't really room for her to. There isn't room for a redemption. There isn't room for a big change of heart. Is there? It's just she's got to go at some point, which is really sad to think about. But yeah, at least she's had her proper like boss. Not a swear moments throughout the series and the Sept stuff and the fantastic.
Yeah. I'm sorry for jumping ahead into like season 8 speculation, but I think it's just so interesting, like the tracks that the characters are set on. Like Jaime's redemption, like he's done so much effort to break away from that sort of corruption of his family and his sister, and he's finally on this redemptive arc. But that's not going to end well, is it? At some point, Jaime's got to go.
He's going to die as well.
He's got to go.
He can die like a hero's death. You know. He can die in the arms of the woman he loves.
Yeah.
Which is Brienne.
Which is Brienne.
It is Brienne.
Yeah, no, that would be fantastic as well.
Obviously, Cersei is skint essentially this season, and she tries to get. She needs the. Is it the High Garden money? So I'm just trying to.
Yes.
See it. So she sends Jaime out to sack High Garden, while Daenerys sends the Unsullied to take Casterly Rock, which I love that subversion of your expectations, where you expect like I don't know this big battle, or Casterly Rock has been bigged up for so many seasons as like the sort of. I don't know, the place of defense. Like no one's ever going to take
it's like the seat of power.
The seat of power, yeah, exactly. But then you get like this delicious subversion. You get Jaime finally confronting Olenna about Joffrey, which is I think I don't know if it made it into the chatty faces, but for me that was almost my potentially most devastating moment ever, because you get like this connection between the two characters, and then she happily sips the poison. Jaime's trying to like make it as painless as possible, and then she like drops that bombshell that she was the one who orchestrated Joffrey's death, and she absolutely wants Cersei to know that it was like her. Back to the ranking of top 50s, if anyone wants the last one.
Oh, good.
The last podcast.
All the old jokes are coming back.
Where does that sort of rank in like the season's high points for you guys? Because I know I was reading your roundup before we came in, James, and that was one of your favourite moments. But how has that changed upon rewatch?
What the like Olenna's death?
Yes,
and
the build up to it.
Top 50.
Top 50.
Yeah.
Get
I'd agree,
it.
top 50.
Top 50.
Top 50.
Not bad.
No, it is great. It's maybe the best last words on the entire show. It's certainly up there.
Yeah.
Top 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Tell Cersei I want her to know it was me.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Ash.
Also good.
Also
Top 50,
very good.
Top 50.
Top 50. This takes us, I suppose, into the Loot Train Battle, which is an incredible.
Oh my god, I've never had a heartache, chest pain like watching that battle with
Really?
the dragon and the. Sorry, I've literally jumped right in because I'm like, oh.
No, go on.
When they're lining up the scorpion, so Bron's come along with his scorpion and is ready to shoot down dragons out of the sky, and they're preparing it. Watching that, like oh my god, I'm sweating thinking about it. Like
I was so scared for Bron during that insight.
I was like, die! If the dragon's gonna live, like the dragons are like my children, like they're proper like.
I was so ready to sacrifice the dragon for Bron in that
Team
situation.
Bron,
Team Bron.
Killing a dragon's like killing the direwolves, but times 200, which is like.
I mean, it's not.
It is. We've grown up with these dragons from season 1.
Well, Ash, I hate to tell you
The
what happens
direwolves
later on
are
in
in
the
season 1 too. The direwolves are in before the dragons.
They're all dead. So I didn't want the dragons to go as well.
They're not all dead.
Okay, Ghost is around, but we ain't seen him much, have we?
I know.
That's a good point. We haven't seen him
No,
for
we
ages,
haven't.
James.
He's not in this season.
Is that just because of like financial reasons? But Game of Thrones makes so much money. Can they not just do it?
You think, but they have said before that they can't really get them to look right.
Right,
Like,
that makes
they've
sense.
struggled before with how they look and stuff, so they're never happy.
Yeah.
But just give us the dogs, man.
Give us the dogs. Yeah, I love this sort of battle sequence. I love that Bron gets that Jon Snow-esque sort of like one shot through. But it does end on a kind of sour note with Jaime going over into the water and that sort of weird cliffhanger ending that I don't think a show like Game of Thrones really needs to tease you like that.
It's very cheap.
Yeah, it doesn't really work on, like, even though you know it's coming, it doesn't really work on rewatch because it's the sort of the climactic moment of that battle and it wants you to leave you hanging, but then it's just, we all knew like Game of Thrones wasn't going to kill someone off like that, and it's sort of worse that they kind of repeat it to a lesser extent later on with Jon in the water and the Beyond the Wall, which we might as well get into because that's the next biggest thing and perhaps the most contentious talking point of the whole season.
We're flying all over this.
We haven't got much time left, to be honest, James. That's why. I know we're flying over, just like the season itself.
Exactly.
It's a very strange.
Teleporting all over the place.
Yeah, like when you would help me do notes for this, we were talking about just how kind of like with characters, like you said, teleporting from place to place, the storylines interweave it. It's such a hard season to pin down. Again, so much happens in 7 episodes, and the pacing is weird, and the time jumps are strange, just like in Beyond the Wall.
Beyond the Wall, yes.
So I think everyone was waiting for the Eastwatch 7 to kind of set off.
Oh my god, the boy band moment.
The boy band moment.
Of the series.
The Avengers moment.
Ultimate little poster moment. You're like, oh yes, go on. Like, probably needs a theme tune for it. Like, it's good.
But did it live up to the hype, Ash?
The actual bit, like the bit afterwards, the image was much better than maybe the bit afterwards, because it was lots of just wandering through very snowy areas until they hit a crazy bear, and the crazy bear was very good. The crazy white bear was good, but then nobody actually. There was no stakes for it because nobody actually went off besides some nameless people. That's the only thing I'd say.
I'm kind of with you. Like, I mean, the entire crux of going Beyond the Wall in the first place is to capture a white so they can show it off to Cersei and Jaime and try to convince them about the threats of the Night King and his army. Was that even a good plan?
The dumbest plan in Game of Thrones history. How is that going to end well?
I don't know. It's a dumb idea, Jim.
I thought it sounded fine. They just find one on their own. It would have been fine. Like, it was an all right idea.
Look, if it wasn't through the convenience of jump cuts and really fast running and dragons, they wouldn't have made that out of that alive. And it doesn't really work anyway. I mean, they get it. And you can't really... I guess it's difficult to convey the power of sort of like the Night King's army and just capturing a white is scary and terrifying, which they do nail like the tension of it when they are showing it off and like how just kind of abject these horrific creatures are. But it's a dumb plan.
They're terrible.
It's a dumb plan.
Absolutely.
It's executed dumbly.
Yeah. You've got like the hound chucks a rock. Wow.
The hound chucks
Come
a
on,
rock.
mate.
I enjoyed that as well. Honestly, all the cheesy moments, I'm like, yeah, go on. Like, I like it, but also it cheapens the Game of Thrones brand a bit. It does.
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, there've been jokes ever since it like aired about the weird time inconsistencies and stuff. And I'm really not one to sort of pick apart like TV shows or films in that way and kind of like look for plot holes. But I think it's just because the consistency of the show before then was so solid, and you never really had these that it sticks out more. Like this entire season, even just small things of like the length of time it takes for characters to get from one place to another. Yeah. Because that was so established earlier, that's why it sticks out here, and I think it still sticks out when you go back to it. Is that going to be kind of like a big problem going forward, you think? Because we've got even less episodes coming up, even though they are longer. fewer. Sorry, James. I made this the exact same mistake in a conversation with you yesterday as well, and you pointed it out. I'm just a terrible, terrible student. But you think it will be a potential problem?
No, because I think they more or less fix it in the finale.
Right.
I think the finale is probably the best episode of the season for me, and definitely the best paced.
Yeah.
And that's more or less the length most of the episodes of season 8 are going to be. I think 4 of them are going to be like 80 minutes ish.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I think if they're all of that kind of quality, then it'll help a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
No. Yeah, I agree. I think James hit it on the head there. The time traveling stuff, I hope that they see out. To be fair, because it was very distracting knowing how far the distances are and how quickly a man can run them.
Yeah.
But I think because everything's going to coalesce into one big jumble by the end of season 8, that it won't come up as an issue as much as it did in this season.
100%. I want to talk about the plot line between Littlefinger, Arya, and Sansa, because that for me
We're jumping back.
We're jumping back now, yeah. Oh, it's like the season. We're all over the place and got culture. Yeah, I want to talk about that because that was a proper low point for me. And going back to it, I think Littlefinger for so long had been this conniving bastard. Git. That's a better word for it. He's just a little git. But I think his end game here, in the poorly way it's executed, it's executed in this most obvious sort of straightforward way, that although his death is satisfying when Arya walks up to him and just like slices him, that is satisfying in the moment, but perhaps not earned in the way it's sort of built up to and sort of like storylined out throughout the entire show. What did you guys...
What do you mean? Do you think it should have been more dramatic for him?
Well, could you not see it coming from like a mile off?
No, I was actually completely sucked in by it. I was like, oh my God, the sisters are arguing. When I watched this, I don't know what was wrong with me. I think everything I wanted to believe, everything they told me so that I would enjoy it more. I think watching back, it definitely is very clear. But... I don't know. I think it's very good from an audience standpoint because he's drawn into his own web and destroyed by it because he's tried to spin all of these lies. But no, to be fair, I'm talking myself into your point. he should have seen it coming. He is the littlest finger. He knows everything. He's got all of the stuff going on. He should be able to tell when this sort of thing's happening to him.
Yeah.
So maybe disappointing more than I thought.
James.
I really didn't like the Sansa Arya stuff in this season. Like the reunion's pretty good, and then Arya comes back and she's fighting with Brienne. That's a really great moment.
Yes.
But then after that, when it like turns them against each other, and I think part of it's because they've been apart so long, you just want them to get along.
That's it, yeah.
That is part of it, but also it's just so badly handled.
Like,
because they're rushing it, so they're like, well, he has to fight Littlefinger and she has to fall out, and it's just all over the place. And then they cut that scene with Bran, which is in the deleted scenes, which kind of shows...
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, there's a scene where Sansa like goes and talks to Bran and figures out Littlefinger's like working against her.
Oh, that would have...
And it all kind of like clicks it together. But just have that in the show.
Yeah.
Have more episodes.
I want to ask you guys that because I really don't know where I stand in it because I don't know whether it's a problem with me or a problem with the show. Like you were saying there, after so long of the Starks being not together, they finally reunite. And then this season is kind of about whether it's true or false driving a wedge between them. Like at the very beginning, you have the stuff with Sansa and Jon, and then you've got Sansa and Arya. And it's so frustrating to watch. I don't know if that's intentional. I don't know if that's how I'm supposed to feel, but I think it is also at the same time badly handled. I don't know who's to blame for it. If it's just my expectations,
it's their fault.
It's their fault. Yeah. It's always their fault.
Aye.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, but I think it does end in a relatively satisfying way. And it was good to see Littlefinger bloody finally.
I feel like that outweighs everything else of it is the thing, which is probably the core of my argument is that watching him get his like the dagger in him that was used on Bran and everything. Like I just thought it was good.
Yeah,
but I think that's the core of the season. I think that's their like, entire ethos is, well, the payoff's good.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter what came in the middle.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, and they've never really relied on that. I don't think it's not necessarily always been about the destination, but the journey. Whereas this season is very much the destination. I think in a way it does help you overlook a lot of the flaws in it. Like the high points we've talked about today are incredibly high in my opinion. Like I love when Game of Thrones season 7 is really good. It's really good. It's just. It does have a lot of pitfalls. It's very inconsistent, but it's great.
Yeah. It is getting to its big bad points without doing the due work to get there.
Yeah. So the season kind of wraps up with Dany and Jon. They've been to see Cersei. She's agreed to help them.
Your face.
Yeah.
Say it.
They've
incest.
They've connected after Jon was hurt beyond the wall.
They've connected.
And then they finally get down to the dirty, as Ash said earlier on. and they start shagging.
Yeah.
Right, we're all adults here.
Yeah, that's on the notes.
While Bran narrates it,
Yeah.
right, and finally confirms, something that Sam and Gilly found out early in the season, that Jon is like the legitimate heir to the throne because his parents, they actually married and he annulled before, as soon as he was born. And that changes like their dynamic completely, and suddenly you've got this kind of weird. It's already creepy because it's incest, right?
Yeah.
It's weird,
Yeah.
but now you've got these sinister undertones of, are these guys going to become sort of enemies in the future because one has a more legitimate right to the throne that someone else we've watched work towards for 7 seasons now.
He's bent the knee.
He has bent the knee.
So
That means nothing to the wider
he bent the
populace.
knee.
You know what? You should go on it and then just convince everyone like that. He's bent the knee. What you going to do? It doesn't really matter. But the thing with Jon's kind of parentage, is that something Bran should have just sort of figured out before now? Because he's had these visions, right? He's seen that, not parentage, sorry, like the fact that they were married and like he's legitimate heir. Is that like the way they handle Bran this entire season? Why is he just pushed off to the side?
They make him like...
Creep.
He is such a creep. He's such a creep.
He is a right creep. But we also basically make him like Wikipedia or Google. Like you just got to search for... You've got to like, Bran, search for this. And then he'll tell you.
Yeah.
So he doesn't go like looking for the useful information himself. But then Sam comes up and asks. And he's like,
true.
oh yeah, I can show you that. And then I'll narrate it while my
Wild
cousin is,
What a creep. Well, are you ever going to figure out what to do with him? And, like,
I hope so.
Round out his story
He
properly.
needs to do something like huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has to.
But is it just going to be like the thing of what everyone thinks, and like he's going to be involved in like the Night King or potentially be the Night King?
He's not going to be
like
the
that?
Night King.
No, is he not?
It'd be good though. A little bit of fan service. A little bit of fan
That would be
service.
awful.
A little bit of fan service after a season of potential fan service.
No, I am. To be fair, it would be quite bad, but I would laugh. So.
I'm just trying to figure out if we've missed anything, because probably there's been loads of stuff.
There's one big thing.
Come on, James.
The wall comes down, mate.
Oh my God, the wall does come down.
I was going to say Tormund looks at Brienne. That's the main thing.
That is the main thing.
That is,
the main thing.
never mind the wall.
Tormund is looking at Brienne all the way through
Yeah,
this
that
season.
little eyebrow thing is good. Now let's talk about the wall.
Now talk about the wall.
He's not even looking at her in this season.
Is it not this one?
That's season 6.
It lingers.
It does linger.
Well,
Yeah.
Well,
Right. So the
cut
wall.
it.
do not cut it.
Okay, so obviously the season ends on the wall coming down. The Night King army is finally invading. It is a bloody epic moment, and we finally see a bloody undead dragon. Yeah, Ash, how did you feel about that?
Horrified.
Did you?
Absolutely. I've talked about my earlier dragon anxiety. This was literally maybe the worst outcome of the whole of Game of Thrones for me. I literally, and that's what happens. Honestly, it upset me so much because I'm getting emotional. Like,
I can tell.
She goes to go and rescue these dumbass people, chucking rocks around, being idiots, not behaving very well. Jon's running around trying to be Mr. Big Sword, trying to shock people. Just get on the damn dragon. Get out. Nobody has to die. But instead a dragon dies, and it's not just as bad as a dragon dying. He then gets turned into a zombie and used to take down the wall to run a zombie takedown of Westeros, and it is terrible. It's terrible.
So is it all Jon's fault?
Yes.
If he just got on the dragon, they wouldn't have given him a dragon, and then he wouldn't have to fight against it. I love the moment in sort of isolation when the wall does come down. You've got Tormund, and I think it's Beric as well, isn't it? Yeah, running away from it. But I'm so worried. I'm so worried that they've bitten off potentially more than they could chew, because they've done such a great job of establishing the Night King's army as this gargantuan threat. We had Hardhome, where it was just anarchy and chaos, and now they've got a dragon, so you can imagine it's going to be so much more. But if they can't animate direwolves properly, how are they going to do this dragon sort of...
Well, they do dragon really well.
I say the difference is dragons aren't real, Josh.
You're right. What?
Yeah.
Okay, that is it. Okay, you've solved it there. You've solved it.
No, I think because it is a scaly creature, they can do a lot more easily.
Yeah.
Whereas, I guess wolves are hard because they're furry.
You need to make them look like realistic-ish.
Yeah. I'm just because I guess I'm very pessimistic. Is that I'm worried about how they're going to make this impossible threat feel eventually manageable, if that makes sense. Because the Night King is so overwhelmingly powerful, and I assume it's going to be a situation where if they take him out, then they kind of just win.
Yeah.
But there's so much scope in that for me to kind of get that wrong and kind of like dilute the impact that he could have. I'm sure he's going to ravage Westeros and like be really horrible. There's going to be loads of deaths, but with 6 episodes to wrap up not only that storyline, but also the storyline of the Iron Throne. Again, I'm just kind of here wondering after this season in particular, where I thought they bit off more than they could chew here, that they might have done it for the final season. But I might be alone in that. I think that might just be my worryings of a crazy person.
I think it's a valid concern.
Okay.
Especially based on what we see this season and the fact that there are only 6 episodes left.
Yeah.
It is entirely possible they could mess it up.
Right.
Like, that's not, you know.
As long as it's viable.
It's viable. I don't think they will. Right. I have faith in them at this point that they know what they're doing and they know how to end it. But yeah, they could totally just ruin it. I hope they don't.
I hope they don't. Well, now we go from one bad moment to our favourite moments. What were your favourite moments of the season as a whole? Not Beyond the Wall.
Not Beyond the Wall. Jamie finally leaving Cersei was pretty great.
That's mine as well.
Yeah, Jamie's my favourite. So
yeah. It was very good. Ooh, I don't know. I have to think of another one now. Come back to me because I think that's up there for me as well.
I've got an even harder question for you next because this is sort of our final, well, it is the final recap before season 8 airs, and I'm sure we'll be doing more podcasts on that once it comes out. But now we've gone through the entire show, and it's a shame that Clevie and Wilborn aren't here to give it their opinions, but they're in WrestleMania. They're having a good time.
They didn't come up with Freyson's pie.
They didn't come up with Freyson's pie. They didn't botch this podcast 4 times before recording. Give me, if you can, a rough ranking of the entire seasons as a whole, as an entire of the show.
Top 50.
And your top 50 moments, yeah.
From worst to best or best to worst?
From worst to best.
Okay. 5. 7. 2. 1. 6, 3, 4.
That's outrageous.
What? Was that the episode order?
No, that was the
seasons.
Oh, Jesus. Orders. I was like, what? That's what confused me then. I was like, how do you get that so intense? For me, best to worst?
Yeah, worst to best.
Worst to best. Oh my God, this is too hard.
It is really hard.
Right, I'm gonna ignore what you've asked me
and
say that season 6 and season 4 are the best ones, the most interesting ones. Season 1 also up there, very high for me. I was going
to say it was the worst one for a second.
Very high for me because I think it's great, and I like all the other ones, but 7 dips.
Yeah, 7's down there for me. I think I'm kind of I initially kind of was all weird when you said season 5 was bottom, but now I think about it, it's 5, 7, 2. 1, 3, 4, 6, 4, 7. No, wait, no.
See, this is what
no, I lost it.
Hard,
I'm doing the number thing is hard.
You're doing it right.
What did I get? 5,
7.
Yes.
2, 1.
Yes.
So far, correct.
Yes.
The same as me.
Correct.
How many numbers have we done?
Yeah.
And then. What, 3?
3.
6, 4.
6, 4.
That's it. Because 4's the best.
4 is the best one.
4 is the best.
Can we agree that 4 is the best one?
We can agree that 4 is the best.
Thank God.
Lovely. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Give me your Game of Thrones rankings, and I hope you're looking forward to season 8. Let us know what you thought about season 7 and what we inevitably missed off here. We'll see you for a season 8 ups and downs, probably. Once it's finally
we won't.
Well, we won't. I don't think we will be. We will be back. We might be doing a podcast and chatty faces, but make sure you like, share, subscribe, and head over to Got Culture channel for more delicious content like this every single day. Even if you don't, I have been Josh, joined by
James,
and joined by
Ash,
and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Freyson's pie.
Freyson's pie. Freyson's pie. Game of Thrones is good.